Hi everyone, I hope everyone's getting on okay and the 2021 has been good for you and yours so far. I wanted to have a chat with you today about a really important occasion in the history of Irish service during the American Civil War, and that was St. Patrick's Day. As we all know, St. Patrick's Day is a really important event for Irish people worldwide, not only in Ireland, but for the diaspora as well. And it was the same during the Civil War, particularly for those ethnic regiments, those green flag units that were largely Irish in makeup. They use St. Patrick's Day not just as a day to celebrate, but almost as an opportunity for a public relations blitz to talk about how good Ireland was and why everyone should like the Irish, if you like. And one of the most famous events during the history of the Army of the Potomac, the main Union Army in the Eastern Theatre during the war, was St. Patrick's Day in 1863, when the Irish Brigade put on this incredible event and show for everybody in the army. They were only one of a number of units to do this type of celebration, and they were every year they would occur. And I wanted to just take a more in-depth look specifically at the 1863 events. It's worth noting at the outset, though, and I often say this when discussing the Irish, most Irish guys who fought in the war didn't serve in these ethnic units, so they didn't have the opportunity to celebrate and commemorate this day the way the others did. It didn't mean, though, that they weren't interested in it. So we have accounts, for example, of men who were fighting with Sherman, who were talking about how, because of the campaigning, they have no chance to drown the old toad this year. In other words, to drink and enjoy the celebrations, but how they hope to do so in subsequent years with their family. But the Irish units really had a unique opportunity to explore their own heritage and their own ethnicity and to celebrate it during the conflict. And so this 1863 one, which became such a massive event for them, is the one we're going to take a look at. So in 1863, when March 17th is coming around, the Irish Brigade has been decimated by significant losses during the Peninsula Campaign, at Antietam, at Fredericksburg. Morale actually had been quite low in the Army of the Potomac at the start of that year. The Mud March had taken place, which had been a disaster. And so these men who are about to embark in the not too distant future on the Chancellorsville and Gettysburg campaigns are having a look at trying to get some downtime. And so at this point of the war, the Irish Brigade is made up of the 63rd, the 69th and the 88th New York Infantry, and the 28th Massachusetts and 116th Pennsylvania Infantry had joined it late the previous year. So they set to work preparing and marking out, first off, an elaborate race course. Horse racing was a really big deal for Irish Americans at this period. And they wanted part of their celebration to be a grand Irish steeplechase. And this is the advertisement they put out in the Army of the Potomac for it. They said it was to come off the 17th of March, rain or shine, by horses, the property of, and to be ridden by commissioned officers of that brigade, the Irish Brigade. The prizes are a purse of $500, second horse to save his stakes, 2.5 mile heat, the best 2 in 3, over 4 hurdles 4.5 feet high, and 5 ditch fences, including 2 artificial rivers 15 feet wide and 6 deep, hurdles to be made of forest pine and braced with hoops. We can see here what these lads are spending a lot of their time doing. In the early months of 1863, they are actually constructing a race course as part of this major event that they hope everyone will come. So they wanted to make sure it was a major celebration. So they'd sent the brigade quartermaster on to Washington in advance to get everything together for a post-race banquet. So among the things he were getting was 35 hams, a side of roasted ox, a pig stuffed with boiled turkeys, and countless chickens, ducks, and small game. Obviously, being an Irish event, alcohol was not to be forgotten. So just to be safe, they had 8 baskets of champagne, 10 gallons of rum, and 10 gallons of whiskey. They erected a bower that could hold hundreds of guests, and there was a general invitation issued to all the officers in the Army of the Potomac. So again here, it's not just a celebration. There's a meaning behind this. They want to put their best foot forward with everybody within the Army, right? So it's important to remember that when we're thinking about these 1863 celebrations. So as all good celebrations do for Patrick's Day, they formed a committee which convened on the 16th of March to decide who was the best qualified to mix the punch. Right, very important to get this right. Captain Gosson and Captain Hogan were selected. anyone who ever looks at the Irish Brigade and any of the celebrations, and indeed a good bit of the laughs that were had, Captain Jack Gosson is generally involved in it. He seems to have really been the life and soul of the party in the Irish Brigade during the Civil War. So those two men worked hard at their task, so hard, in fact, that they both felt overpowered by their labours and had to be relieved from duty. In other words, they were, I think, partaking a bit too much in the ingredients of the punch. They weren't the only, the Irish Brigade were setting all of these celebrations in train, but they weren't the only ethnic Irish unit in the Army of the Potomac. So just to take another one, the 9th Massachusetts Infantry, another storied regiment, they had suffered the highest losses of any unit at Gaines Mill in 1862, any federal unit at Gaines Mill. But in 1863, they weren't to be left wanting when it came to their preparations. So Adjutant M.W. Phelan and Quartermaster Mooney were assigned by their Colonel Patrick Guiney to make ready for the day. And they secured goodies from Washington for the occasion, which they invited their entire division to attend. So again, you see the importance of them trying, in an era where there was a lot of anti-Irish nativism. The Emancipation Proclamation had recently come in, so they're trying to launch this public relations blitz on the military. But a week before St. Patrick's Day, the 9th Massachusetts announced the schedule of events for their regiment. So this is what they were going to be doing. There was to be a sack race, a race for a greased pig. Everyone was going to be trying to climb a greased pole. There were going to be jumping matches, refreshments, horse racing, of course, and a mock dress parade. So often in these events, the officers and the privates would switch places for the day, so that the other ranks could order around the officers. So it was all supposed to be a kind of a jolly event. In the 9th Massachusetts, there were small amounts of money for the winners of each event, apart from the winner of the greased pig race, who got to keep the pig instead. And whoever managed to climb the 15-foot greased pole at the top was a 10-day leave, 10-day pass. And again, you see this frequently during the conflict, that you often see these furloughs, these passes on top of greased poles. Very rarely does anyone ever get them. A green area opposite the 9th Massachusetts camping ground was prepared, and the camp was decorated with evergreens and Irish mottos. Okay, so when St. Patrick's Day 1863 finally came, it was a great sunny day. It was good, really good conditions for everyone. The Irish Brigade started with religious ceremonies, and then the horse racing started. And each rider actually dressed up for the occasion. Some of them donned the colours that they would have worn in their hunting clubs and racing clubs back in Ireland. So there was one officer who was from Galway who dressed up in scarlet with a green velvet smoking cap, which were the colours of the Galway Blazers Club that he had belonged to when he had been in Ireland. Thousands of men and officers came to see this event. So if you read a lot of Army of the Potomac memoirs, you will come across reference to the St. Patrick's Day 1863 event. It's one of the most famous events in the history of the Army of Potomac. The Army commander was there, Joe Hooker, at the time. And the designated start time for the racing was 11 a.m. So there was a crack of the whip and a note from the bugler, and the 6 runners and riders who'd been selected headed off. And the winner, luckily enough, on Thomas Francis Marr, the commander of the Irish Brigade's grey horse called Jack Hinton, was Captain Jack Gosson, who had apparently not been feeling too worse for the wear from his overexertions with the punch the previous night. The racing element of it was very much an officer's affair, even though the men could view it. But after lunch, there was more sport, and a lot of it was designed to try and include the other ranks. So this was the Irish Brigade's after lunch sequence of events. First off was a foot race, 1/2 mile distance, best of heat, that was open to all non-commissioned officers and privates, with the winner to receive $7 and second $3. So that's nearly a month's pay for the winner. Second was casting weights, the weights to weigh from 10 to 14 pounds, the winner to receive $3. Third was running after a soaked pig. You can see this was a popular pastime during the Civil War. The prize to be the pig for the man who holds it. Fourth was a hurdle race, 1/2 mile distance, open to all non-commissioned officers and privates. The winner again to receive $7, the second $3. A wheelbarrow race, like all good sports days. The contestants, though, to be blindfolded and limited to 6 soldiers of the Irish Brigade. The winner there was to get $5, the distance to be decided on the ground. The sixth was a sack race, jumping in sacks to the distance of 500 yards, and for the winner there was $5. And seventh, there was a contest on the light fantastic toe, consisting of Irish reels, jigs, and hornpipes. The best dancer to receive $5, the second best $3, to be decided by a judge appointed by the chairman. Right, so you get this Irish cultural, Irish dancing element at the end. So at the same time when all this is going on, back at the 9th Massachusetts, with their division, the games were in full swing. So the greased pole, apparently, because there was that 10-day furlough, that 10-day leave on top of it, was particularly popular. And attempts to secure the past air commenced at 10 a.m. So this is the account that we're given of those attempts. Apparently, one tall, stout fellow made a desperate effort to lift himself from the ground, and after trying for about half an hour, was reluctantly compelled to give up, having at that time only achieved about an inch. He looked wistfully at the paper fluttering above him, and then turned away to give room to an ambitious youngster, who succeeded in getting halfway up, when, coming to a spot greasier than the rest, he began to slip, and did not pause until he came to the ground amid the roars of the crowd. So try as they might, no one succeeded in reaching the top of the pole, but their disappointment was tempered a bit at 11 a.m. when each man was issued a gill of whiskey, which was shared with the men of the 62nd Pennsylvania Regiment, a non-Irish regiment, but who they served with. Unfortunately, though, this mixture of alcohol and sporting events and stuff was dangerous, and tragedy did strike in the afternoon horse race with the 9th Massachusetts, when Quartermaster Mooney collided with Dr. Faxon of the 32nd Massachusetts Infantry while they were both riding at full speed. Mooney was knocked unconscious and died of his injuries a few days later. So, you know, these are real events. This horse racing was dangerous and that they were taking place in. So that put a bit of a dampener for the 9th on those events. Their last event of the day in that regiment was a mock dress parade. They'd also done that the previous year and would do it again. But for the occasion, the men elected their own officers and the enlisted soldiers had full control. The manual of arms was parodied, and one of the men in Company G, who was elected colonel, managed to reduce everyone to laughter, apparently, by accurately imitating their Colonel Guiney's voice. So I don't think it takes much imagination for us to know what both groups were doing that evening in the Irish Brigade and in the 9th Massachusetts. Drinking and general merriment is how it was described. Poems were read and songs were sung, and for a day and night the worries of the war were left behind. Everyone who was there remembered it. So it passed into legend in the Army of Potomac, as I was mentioning, and we're lucky actually, and I'll provide a link to somebody. He's a special artist. Edwin Forbes, who was with Frank Leslie's magazine, actually sketched a lot of the Irish Brigade events in a series of sketches to preserve the festivities. I wanted to just bring this short look at 1863 and the importance of St. Patrick's Day to a close by looking at the experiences of one individual, though. So I spend a lot of my time working on these widows and dependent pension files of men who did not survive their service. And I've been gathering letters together. And I actually do have a letter written by a man who was in the 9th Massachusetts referencing the St. Patrick's Day 1863 events. And he was a Cork immigrant called David O'Keefe. He was a cabinet maker. And he had been in the army for about 6 months by the time 17th of March comes around. He'd emigrated to Reading, Massachusetts with his wife and family. And he wasn't a young man when he joined the army. He was 44 years old, which was pretty old to be trying to stand up to the ardors of campaign. So he and his young family had gone out of Ireland in and around the time of the famine. We're not precisely sure, but he was a famine era immigrant. But a few days after St. Patrick's Day, he dictated a letter home. So it's written and dated from Falmouth, Virginia on the 26th of March, 1863. And I'll read it to you here in its entirety. It starts off, "Dear Jane, I received your letter of the 19th instant last evening, which brought the sad news of the death of poor Jeb. I regret your loss, and I think the little ones will more than ever feel the need and guide of a mother's hand, and I know they have nothing to fear while you are left to them. I am in good health, thank God, and hope the receipt of this will find you enjoying a like blessing. Of course, I have no idea what time I can go home. It may be in a few months. All is quiet here at present, and the weather is very changeable. We fare better than might be expected. We have bake ovens erected and have fresh bread every day. I'm glad to hear of the upward tendency of business. and hope it will continue prosperous. We had quite a merry time here Patrick's Day. Officers were chosen from the ranks to officiate during the day, and the officers became privates. A dress parade and sword presentation caused considerable merriment. A grease pole was erected, but no one could climb it. A furlough was on the top. Horse racing and music from the band concluded the amusement of the day. Our colonel delivered a very humorous and appropriate address in the morning. The whole affair was a pleasant one. Tell Kitty to be in good cheer. No more, but write soon from your friend David O'Keefe. P.S. Direct your letter to Company A. So just to take David's story forward from that letter in March, at the end of May, the 9th Massachusetts Infantry were ordered to Ellis's Ford on the Rappahannock River, where they dug defensive positions to face rebel pickets on the other side of the water. This is after Chancellorsville. And on the 5th of June, the regiment marched to Kelly's Ford as the Union Army were seeking to find out where Robert E. Lee's military Army of Northern Virginia had gone. Lieutenant John Doherty of David's Company A later remembered that the campaign was a severe one from marching, severe duty and exposure. David dictated one more letter written to his sister from the midst of the campaign at Kelly's Ford on the 6th of June. And now this man who was in his mid-40s was clearly feeling the pace. He worried that the hardships of the summer campaign would, quote, break us. So you can see the type of arduous conditions he was enduring. He expressed his relief that his son David was not at the front, so he could avoid the marching that he and the other poor devils had to endure. Unfortunately, that proved to be David's last letter. A few weeks later, his son David Jr., who was working as a guard at Portsmouth Grove Hospital in Rhode Island, encountered a group of wounded men from the 9th Massachusetts. And as you would expect, he went up to them and asked them, did they know his father and did they have any news of him? And as David Jr. remembered it, he said, I inquired if they knew father, and as good luck or bad as it proved in this case, I found a man who wrote father's letters, Edward Noonan, and he told me that he died in the hospital at Fairfax Seminary. In only a matter of days following his last letter, David's concerns about his summer campaign breaking him down came to fruition. He was taken from Kelly's Fort to Fairfax Seminary, where he died on the 23rd of June, 1863, of what was described as old age and general debility. In effect, the pace of the march trying to track Robert E. Lee's Army in Northern Virginia had been too much for him. And we often see this in the war. So quite a poignant end. So that St. Patrick's Day has all the more meaning, I suppose, in relation to him, as it was really the last time he had a bit of downtime, a bit of enjoyment, a bit of merriment, thinking about home, thinking about family and enjoying it with those around him. So that's just to give you a flavor of some of the important aspects of that 1863 event, which really was the most famous year for St. Patrick's Day in the war. But as I say, they continued these sort of celebrations all the way through whenever they could. In 1864 and 1865 as well, in the trenches of Petersburg, they always sought to mark it in these ethnic units. I hope now, where we don't have the opportunity maybe to mark it as we normally would, that all of you have a very good St. Patrick's Day 2021. Take care.